The observation deck's viewport stretched wide, a colossal glass pane that framed the endless swirl of stars as they drifted in the void. Commander Nexkel stood solitary, his four-fingered hands folded behind his back, gaze fixed on a pale blue orb spinning silently against the patchwork of constellations. The ship, the Veshnar, hung in orbit around the planet they had all heard whispered about in the ancient archives Earth. The air inside the command chamber was dense with the subtle hum of machinery and the faint, sterile scent of recycled oxygen. Screens flickered with endless streams of data, atmospheric composition, electromagnetic emissions, signs of technological activity. But what drew Nexkel's attention most was the silent calm of the planet below. From this vantage, Earth seemed fragile, almost innocent. Oceans rippled gently, clouds drifted lazily over vast continents, and sprawling cities twinkled softly in the dark. Defenseless. Nexkel thought, the word a silent echo in the chambers of his mind. The Nexari had scarred the galaxy for remnants of the demons, the ancient foes once described in their sacred texts. For millennia, stories of these creatures had been dismissed as myth, folklore born from the fevered imaginations of a species long extinct. The demons had been known for their ravenous appetite for destruction, their brutal conquest of star systems, and their terrifying weapons that bent reality itself. But here was a planet, ripe with life, showing no signs of the devastation those tales had painted. No orbital defenses, no fleet formations circling its skies, no warning pulses signaling a state of military readiness. Just an untouched blue world, as vulnerable as a newborn's cry. Let us see what lies beneath the surface. Nexkel mused. Voice a low rumble within his chitinous throat. Behind him, the soft clatter of footsteps announced the arrival of Quinlex, the ship's chief scientist. Her multifaceted eyes gleamed with an intensity born from years of study and discovery. Commander, she said, voice precise and calm, preliminary scans confirm the absence of any spaceborne defensive technologies. No missile deterrents. Planetary sensors are minimal. Primitive, really. Nexkel inclined his head slightly. Yet the planet's energy signature is anything but primitive. There is industry, power consumption, electromagnetic chatter indicative of sentient activity. Quinlex's mandibles quivered thoughtfully. Yes, but their technology seems confined to the surface, no significant expansion into orbital infrastructure. Their weapons, from what little we can discern, are of a caliber suitable only for ground combat. The commander's gaze returned to the blue sphere beneath them. This must be the species, the demons of legend. Though they appear restrained. She nodded. Or unaware. The Veshnar drifted further into orbit, the sensors probing deeper into Earth's atmosphere, peeling back layers of clouds and atmosphere like a surgeon's scalpel. The swirling white veils gave way to sprawling urban landscapes, glowing with the warm amber of electric lights. The cities pulsed with life, veins of highways glittering with moving dots of light, vehicles in constant, controlled motion. Nexkel's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of ancient lore and current observations. The demons, according to legend, had wrought havoc so profound that entire star systems had been erased from existence. They had wielded weapons that could fracture planets, devices that bent space and time to their will. Yet here was Earth, alive and seemingly peaceful. Was this the calm before the storm? The soft beep of a console snapped his attention to the present. Commander. A voice called through the comm. Sharp, steady. It was Lieutenant Kesh. Unidentified vessel detected approaching the planet's surface. Unknown origin. Nexkel's eyes narrowed. On screen, the main view flickered, resolving into a sleek, angular craft descending through the atmosphere. Unlike the Nexari ships, organic and flowing in design, this vessel was utilitarian, metallic, battered but resilient. It streaked through the clouds, engines blazing with fierce orange light. Human. Quinlex breathed, recognition dawning in her eyes. From the first contact archives. Terrestrial origin. We have not seen one of their ships in centuries, not since the last scouting expeditions. The vessel's descent was controlled, but urgent, like a hunter closing in on prey. Nexkel's instincts prickled with an ancient foreboding, a sense that this ship bore more than just explorers. It carried the weight of history, of a legacy that the Nexari had long hoped was extinguished. Prepare a reconnaissance team, he ordered. We will observe but not engage. We must understand their intentions before action is taken. The ship's sensors tracked the descent, all the way to a massive structure near the planet's surface. A sprawling complex, nestled in a forest of towering trees, their green canopy brushing the low clouds. The human craft settled smoothly onto a landing platform, thrusters flaring briefly against the mist. Nexkel stood motionless, a statue carved from obsidian and shadow. As data poured into the ship's systems, the sounds of the human vessel's engines winding down, the faint hiss of pressurized airlocks cycling open. Commander, Quinlex said, voice barely above a whisper. Their technology is crude compared to ours, but highly efficient. Adaptive in ways we did not anticipate. The command chamber grew tense, the low hum of the ship's core blending with the silent questions hanging in the air. Nexkel's gaze fell to a small monitor, displaying a live feed from an external camera mounted near the landing site. Figures emerged from the ship. 2 humans, clad in armor that gleamed under the filtered sunlight. One was a woman, her eyes sharp and commanding. The other, a man whose posture spoke of readiness and battle, hardened experience. Commanders Lisa Kim and Brandon Sullivan. Quinlex identified. They are the leaders of this expedition. The humans moved with purpose. Scanning the surroundings, their weapons at the ready but not raised. They exuded confidence, a quiet assertion that this was their world, and they were prepared for whatever challenges it might present. Nexkel's mind grappled with the implications. Here was a species once thought to be legend, now taking their first steps beyond their cradle world, in an era the Nexari had believed was lost to time. The silence was broken by a sudden flurry of activity on the sensor grid. A rapid spike in electromagnetic interference, as if the humans had activated some device. Nexkel's eyes flashed with alarm. Energy readings. Quinlex reported, air spiking, localized to the landing site. They're deploying technology, but it's unfamiliar to us. The planet below seemed to hold its breath, the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant calls of wildlife contrasting sharply with the sudden eruption of human machinery. Nexkel's thoughts spiraled back to the ancient archives, to warnings buried in the oldest Nexari texts, tales of a species that could manipulate energy and matter with terrifying ease, a species that had once hunted the stars without mercy. Could it be that Earth's defenders lay not in vast fleets or screens of shields, but in the will and ingenuity of a single ship and its crew? The hum of the Veshnar filled the chamber as the Nexari commander made his choice. Observation alone would no longer suffice. The truth of this planet and its inhabitants would be revealed in the crucible of encounter. Outside, Earth spun quietly, a jewel of blue and green in the dark canvas of space. Defenseless no longer, not while one ship dared to arrive. Nexkel inhaled deeply, the weight of history upon his shoulders. The age of legends was awakening, and the Nexari would face what was once thought to be myth. The first move had been made. The game was beginning. The observation deck of the Nexari command cruiser was a cavernous expanse of gleaming obsidian panels and bioluminescent strips, casting a dim, pulsating azure glow that bathed everything in an otherworldly light. Nexkel stood alone, his 4 eyes scanning the vastness of space beyond the reinforced viewport. The void was a canvas of endless ink punctuated by distant stars, but all his attention was fixed on the singular anomaly drifting silently ahead the human ship. Unlike the sleek, crystalline forms of Nexari vessels, the human craft was a heavy, hulking silhouette etched in shadows and steel. Its bulk was unbalanced, asymmetrical in ways that defied Nexari aesthetics. Where Nexari ships flowed like living organisms, graceful and fluid, the human ship was an imposing amalgam of jagged edges, exposed plating, and mechanical appendages. It seemed almost primitive. Yet, there was an undeniable presence radiating from it, an aura that stirred something ancient and instinctual within Nexkel. The air in the chamber was thick with a tangible tension, a mixture of awe and unease. Nexkel's mandibles clenched subtly as he inhaled the recycled atmosphere, flavored faintly with the metallic tang of onboard systems and the faintest pulse of alien ozone. His mind raced through the data streams cascading from the ship's sensors, a torrent of unfamiliar energy signatures and electromagnetic fluctuations that defied their best analytical models. Quinlex's voice crackled over the calm, a sharp and precise intrusion into the solemn silence. "Commander, the readings are consistent with the archival descriptions of the so-called demons. Their hull integrity and energy output surpass our estimates by an order of magnitude. They are not mere scavengers or weaklings as we once theorized." Nexkel's gaze hardened. The ancient texts had always felt like myth, coded warnings from a past era. The Nexari had believed those demons long extinct, a cautionary tale to unite the species against complacency. But now, confronted with the tangible reality of this human ship, the myth breathed and loomed before them in flesh and iron. He turned away from the viewport, pacing the deck with an unnerving rhythm. The ship's hum vibrated through his limbs, a symphony of power and resilience. Every panel, every rivet on that grim silhouette whispered stories of unyielding will and relentless survival. It was a stark contrast to the elegance of Nexari design, which prized harmony and integration between organic and synthetic. Humans, it seemed, embraced brute force as an art form. The sensor room adjacent to the command deck flickered with shifting holograms, bright overlays casting ghostly shades over the faces of Nexari analysts. They murmured nervously among themselves, their compound eyes darting between data and the looming image on the main display. The human ship's internal composition was a chaotic labyrinth of corridors, chambers, and weapons arrays, each sector pulsing with life signs, hundreds of them. Nexkel's mind grasped at the implications. The ship was not a solitary scout or a ragtag traveler. It was a fortress, a bastion of war and endurance. The Nexari archives spoke of demons wielding devastating weapons, capable of annihilating entire star systems. And here, in this cold vacuum, was proof they had not perished but evolved, hidden, waiting. The atmosphere shifted as the sound of distant alarms echoed faintly through the cruiser's halls, a subtle reminder that observation alone could not last forever. The human vessel was moving now, slow yet deliberate, its engines thrumming with a steady pulse that resonated through the hole beneath Nexkel's feet. Sensors detected energy build-ups along the ship's flanks, defensive systems powering up. Nexkel's four eyes narrowed. This was no peaceful approach. It was a challenge, a statement carved in the language of fire and steel. His claws rested briefly on the console as he accessed the historical logs once more. Images flickered, etched depictions of towering figures clad in armored carapaces, wielding weapons that spat fire and death. The Nexari had recorded these demons as a scourge, destroyers of worlds, entities of chaos that once pushed the galaxy into darkness. The legends had been warnings, passed down through generations to prepare for their inevitable return. And now, the legends had come alive. A sudden burst of interference rippled through the sensor arrays, momentarily scrambling the readouts. Nexkel's instincts flared. He signaled to the nearby guard units, their scaled forms moving with swift purpose. The ship's corridors thrummed with renewed urgency as Nexari personnel prepared for the unknown. A deep vibration thrummed through the cruiser as the human vessel powered a sudden emission. A pulse of energy that washed over the Nexari sensors like a shockwave. The deck lights flickered, casting long, jittering shadows. Nexkel steadied himself against the console, the residual hum reverberating in his exoskeleton. The readings revealed a weapon system unlike any Nexari had encountered. An oscillating plasma matrix that could vaporize matter in a heartbeat. The sheer destructive potential was staggering. Yet the humans seemed to wield it with a practiced finesse, as if it was an extension of their own flesh. The scent of ionized particles lingered faintly in the observation chamber, mingling with the sterile, recycled air. It was a smell that evoked memories of long-forgotten battles and scorched worlds. Nexkel felt a wave of apprehension wash over his mind, a primal recognition that whatever the humans were, they were made for war and survival, in a way the Nexari had never anticipated. He recalled the reports of human soldiers, stories whispered in the lower decks by Nexari scouts who had glimpsed the humans' ground operations. The humans moved with relentless determination, adapting quickly to hostile environments, their bodies and machines intertwined in a brutal synergy. The ship before him was not just a vessel. It was a living testament to their indomitable spirit. Nexkel's internal systems processed the data with a mix of scientific curiosity and an undeniable surge of dread. This was not an encounter of equals. It was a confrontation with a force that could shatter the Nexari's carefully constructed order. Without warning, the human ship deployed smaller crafts, sleek fighters that erupted from hidden bays like swarms of metallic hornets. They darted through space, their engines leaving streaks of blue, white light against the dark canvas. The Nexari's defense grids roared to life, tracking the incoming threat. The observation deck erupted in controlled chaos as tactical displays, illuminated with incoming attack vectors. Nexkel's heart raced, a drumbeat of ancient fear and newfound respect. The fighters were fast, aggressive, and precise, exhibiting combat maneuvers that defied logic and prediction. As the skirmish unfolded, the Nexari realized their traditional energy shields were no match for the humans' adaptive weaponry. The fighters weaved through their defenses with unsettling ease, their plasma cannons carving arcs of destruction through the cruiser's outer hull. Nexkel ordered countermeasures, deploying swarms of energy drones to intercept. The air was alive with the staccato crackle of laser fire and the low hum of electromagnetic pulses. Sparks flew as systems strained under the barrage, the cruiser's integrity threatened but holding. Through the turmoil, Nexkel's mind fixated on the human commander, Lisa Kim, whose reputation preceded her like a shadow. The reports described her as a tactical genius, a warrior forged in the fires of countless battles. Here, in real time, her presence was palpable, commanding this iron beast with unyielding resolve. Despite the onslaught, the human ship advanced steadily, its bulk unyielding. With a calculated maneuver, it unleashed a concentrated cannon blast, a searing lance of energy that struck the Nexari cruiser's foresection. The impact sent shockwaves through the hull, shattering reinforced plating and igniting a cascade of cascading systems failures. The explosion was a violent chorus of shattering metal and flaring energy, painting the abyss with brilliant hues of orange and white. Nexkel was thrown back against the observation deck bulkhead, his vision momentarily blurred. The acrid scent of burning circuitry and ozone filled the air, mingling with the low groans of a ship pushed to its limits. As the smoke cleared and emergency lighting bathed the chamber in a dim red glow, Nexkel's claws clenched in realization. The humans were not mere myth, not simple scavengers or weaklings as once believed. They were a force of nature, wild, relentless, and terrifyingly effective. His mind replayed the ancient warnings etched in stone and memory. Beware the demons who rise anew, their flesh is iron, their wrath unbound. Now, those warnings were not distant echoes, but an urgent call to arms. The Nexari were forced to confront a truth long buried beneath layers of complacency and pride. The humans were not defenseless, nor were they to be underestimated. They were the living embodiment of the horrors that had once shattered galaxies. And with one ship, one unyielding bastion of flesh and iron, they had arrived. Nexkel's eyes narrowed further, a grim resolve settling over him. This revelation would change everything. The Nexari would no longer count on myths or fading legends. They would face the humans with open eyes, prepared for a war that could decide the fate of their entire species. The ancient demons had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The dim glow of the Nexari command bridge pulsed softly, its bioluminescent panels casting shifting shadows across the angular surfaces. Nexkel stood motionless, her gaze fixed on the holographic display hovering above the central console. The intricate web of star systems, battle formations, and sensor readings shimmered in ethereal blues and greens. Yet, beneath the precision of data lay a creeping unease that rippled through her scales like a cold current. Quinlex, the ship's lead scientist, hovered nearby, his mandibles twitching as he studied the latest sensor feed. The array of readings, the electromagnetic fluctuations, the heat signatures, the faintest traces of particle emissions, refused to align with any Nexari combat doctrine or historical precedent. The humans were not behaving as expected. They were not predictable. We have always relied on patterns, Nexkel thought bitterly. The Nexari, a species of logic and order, had built their empire on understanding, anticipating, and controlling the chaos of war. Their archives told tales of the great demon species, their ferocity and destruction. When the humans first arrived, the ancient records led them to believe Earth was nothing but a primitive, defenseless world. But one ship had shattered that assumption. A sharp, piercing alarm cut through the heavy silence, an alert from the forward sensors. Quinlex's eyes narrowed, and Nexkel's claws tightened on the console. The human vessel had shifted course again, executing maneuvers that defied their tactical algorithms. It was as if the ship itself thought like a living creature, unpredictable and adaptive. The bridge lights dimmed further as the external viewport activated. Through the thick, reinforced glass, the void glittered with distant stars, and a cold nebula swirling in shades of violet and silver. Against this cosmic backdrop, the human ship loomed, sleek, angular, but with an almost organic fluidity to its movements. It danced through space like a predator stalking unseen prey. Nexkel's mind raced, recalling the data logs from the ancient archives. The demons, as their ancestors called them, were said to possess a mind unlike any other, one that could anticipate not just patterns but intentions. They fought not only with weapons but with unpredictability, fueled by a fierce, chaotic intelligence. The Nexari had thought those demons extinct, legends sealed away in dust-covered tomes. Now, staring at the human vessel's erratic trajectory, she felt the old fears reawaken. The bridge hummed with tension. Sensors picked up another burst of activity. Energy spikes, sudden pulses of radiation. Explosions rippling through the vacuous space around them. The humans were testing, perhaps probing defenses, or launching a psychological battle no sensor could detect. Nexkel's thoughts twisted with frustration and awe. This was not merely a fight of technology but of wills. The unpredictable mind that defied analysis. Quinlex broke the silence at last. Commander, our predictive models fail. Each engagement deviates from calculated outcomes by margins too large to be coincidence. They operate beyond our understanding of tactical reasoning. Her mandibles clacked softly in agreement. We must adapt. If we rely solely on logic, we will be outmaneuvered. But even as she spoke, doubt gnawed at her. The Nexari had faced many foes, from the silica hardened Crathars to the crystalline Korvax, all of whom followed rigid, hierarchical patterns. The humans, with their chaotic ingenuity, were unlike any enemy before. Suddenly, the ship shuddered, a violent jerk that sent ripples through the deck. The human vessel had unleashed a sudden, devastating energy blast. Nexkel's body tensed as the shockwave rippled through the hull, the subtle tremors vibrating against the armor plating. The bridge's ambient noise surged, alarms blaring as systems registered damage. Shields down 20%. One officer reported, voice steady despite the chaos. The scent of ozone, sharp and acrid, filled the recycled air as emergency protocols kicked in. Nexkel's heart beat faster, each pulse a drum of battle readiness. The human ship moved closer, no longer dancing but charging with a furious intent. Its weapons glowed with an eerie, shifting light, a blend of plasma and something unidentifiable. The signature of weapons technology that baffled even the most advanced Nexari sensors. The air in the command room seemed to thicken with tension, as if the very space was charged with the anticipation of destruction. Nexkel's mind flashed back to the stories from the ancient archives, whispered legends of the demonic species, unpredictability, their capacity for improvisation in the face of overwhelming odds. The humans embodied that chaos, wielding it like a dark blade. They were not merely fighting, they were weaving a narrative of destruction, telling a story with each pulse of energy, each evasive maneuver. Outside, the void erupted with light and sound, a symphony of destruction and survival. The human ship spiraled, emitting bursts of energy that lit up the darkness like fireworks. Explosions flared against the Nexari vessel's hull, sending shards of unknown metals and plasma particles hurtling through space. The smell of burning circuits and the acrid tang of ionized air filled Nexkel's nostrils, grounding her in the brutal reality of battle. Her claws flexed involuntarily. We must not let fear dictate our response, she reminded herself, voice steady though her insides churned. We are the Nexari. We have conquered galaxies. Yet this fight is unlike any other. The human ship shifted tactics again, silent, unexpected. It disengaged from direct assault and instead deployed a swarm of autonomous drones, each a blur of movement and coordinated chaos. The drones darted through space with uncanny precision, weaving between defensive turrets and energy barriers. The bridge's sensory arrays struggled to track them all, the digital readouts blurring into indecipherable patterns. The drones are not just weapons, Quinlex observed, eyes wide behind his optical lenses. They adapt. They learn. Nexkel's breath caught. The realization settled like a storm cloud. This was not brute force. It was a battle of intellect, of consciousness. The humans had brought not only technology, but a living, thinking threat that evolved in real time. The unpredictability was their ally, their weapon forged in the crucible of their chaotic minds. Her thoughts turned to the human commander, Lisa Kim. She recalled from intercepted transmissions, a leader whose calm precision belied the tempest of strategy unfolding within that ship. Kim's voice, when it had come across the comm, was steady yet resolute, a beacon of order within chaos. Yet here, now, even order was fluid. Brace for boarding protocols, Nexkel commanded, her voice slicing through the claimer like a blade. The ship's internal defenses reconfigured, energy fields shimmering into place, and the crew readied weaponry designed for close combat. The humans were not just attacking from afar, they intended to breach, to take the fight inside the very heart of the Nexari vessel. As the boarding pods launched, streaking like meteors toward the hull, Nexkel's mind raced through every possible countermeasure, every contingency. But the unpredictability of their foe rendered many plans obsolete before they could be enacted. The human soldiers, she knew, were trained not only in weapons but in improvisation, in turning the tide with a single, unexpected move. The pods slammed against the hull with thunderous impact, airlocks cycling open with a hiss that filled the corridors. Nexkel could almost smell the distant metallic tang of their suits as the invaders spilled aboard, silent and efficient. The ship seemed to hold its breath, the weight of ancient fears pressing heavy on every scale and sinew. In the narrow corridors, the clash of energy weapons echoed, sharp, crackling bursts of light that illuminated faces hardened by resolve. The smell of burning circuitry mixed with the acrid smoke of plasma discharges. Nexkel's heart pounded with a primal rhythm as she imagined the human soldiers pressing forward, their unpredictable tactics forcing Nexari defenders to abandon standard formations. To think on the fly. Her own thoughts dove into the chaos, trying to anticipate the next move, to predict the unpredictable. But the humans moved like shadows, shifting, adapting, striking where least expected. Each encounter was a dance of death and survival, a testament to the strange and terrifying minds that refused to be cataloged or contained. Suddenly, a violent jolt shook the ship. The human forces had breached a critical junction, spreading through the arteries of the vessel like wildfire. Nexkel felt a strange mixture of fear and admiration. Here was a species that embodied the very essence of chaos, whose mind was a labyrinth no algorithm could solve. She closed her eyes briefly, the hum of the ship's failing systems a mournful chorus. This is only the beginning, she thought. The demons of old are not just memories. They live, breathe, and fight in the unpredictable minds of humans. As the battle raged, the realization settled deep within her core. The Nexari had underestimated Earth's defenders, not because they lacked strength or technology, but because they misunderstood the nature of their enemy's power. A power born from chaos, creativity, and an indomitable will to survive. The second revelation was complete. Earth was not defenseless. It was unpredictable, unyielding, and terrifying in ways the ancient archives had failed to convey. And now, as the first human ship continued its brutal assault, the Nexari knew the vast expanse of space stretched out endlessly, a cold and indifferent canvas speckled with the distant fires of dying stars. Nexkel stood rigid on the bridge of the flagship Vorthan's Wrath, his multifaceted eyes flickering with unsteady light, as the events unfolding before him defied every expectation born from ancient texts and meticulous calculations. The steady hum of the ship's engines thrummed beneath his feet, a constant reminder of the fragile momentum that carried them deeper into the unknown. They had anticipated a simple confrontation, a swift extinction of a species presumed defenseless, primitive, and scattered. Instead, what they now witnessed was raw, chaotic energy born from something far more terrifying than any myth had captured. The human vessel, an odd, angular construct they had come to know only as the Horizon, circulated Earth with an uncanny precision. From the Nexari perspective, it was odd to see such a single ship moving with the grace and purpose of a predator stalking its prey. But the more confounding truth was not the ship itself. It was the sudden surge of smaller human craft that erupted from Earth's orbit like a swarm of spectral fireflies, weaving intricate patterns that confounded Nexari tactical projections. Nexkel's attention was drawn to Quinlex, the scientific officer, who stood hunched over a console, his deep purple carapace shimmering faintly under the harsh artificial light. Quinlex's antennae twitched nervously, a subtle sign of agitation in their species. His voice, laced with disbelief and awe, filled the bridge. "They're not fighting alone," Quinlex muttered, eyes fixed on the data streaming across the screen. "They are connected, linked within a network unlike anything we have documented. Their minds, their crafts, it's symbiotic, a collective intelligence that far exceeds individual capabilities." The commander's jaw tightened. The Nexari had believed their oldest archives, these relics of wars millennia past, had characterized the humans as disorganized and fragile. The so, called demons, were nothing more than mythologized enemies, extinct ages ago. Yet the evidence now screamed that the humans had evolved into something new and terrifying. The ship's sensors caught the faintest tremor in the atmosphere of Earth's surface. From miles away, Nexkel could almost feel it, a trembling heartbeat, steady and unyielding. It was this rhythm that seemed to synchronize the vast array of human vessels. They moved not as isolated entities, but as extensions of a singular will, a living organism comprised of myriad parts. Nexkel's mind flashed to the image of Brandon Sullivan, the human soldier they had glimpsed during the initial encounter. The resolute determination etched into his scarred face had been a herald of something deeper, an unbreakable unity forged through trials unknown to the Nexari. He was not merely a soldier, he was a symbol of relentless cohesion. Suddenly, the calm was shattered as a flotilla of Nexari fighters surged forward to intercept the swarm. The ensuing battle erupted in a dazzling display of light and sound. The sharp crackle of energy weapons, the sickening groan of metallic hulls under fire, and the high-pitched whine of evasive thrusters painting vivid arcs against the void. The Nexari forces unleashed a barrage of plasma bolts, their incandescent blasts weaving a deadly tapestry aimed at the human crafts. But the humans responded not with isolated counterattacks, but with coordinated maneuvers so seamless they seemed choreographed by a single mind. Their vessels shifted position in perfect harmony, shields flaring and collapsing in rapid succession, absorbing hits that should have shattered them. It was as if the swarm itself possessed an instinctive knowledge of every danger, every weakness. The Vorthan's wrath trembled as a distant explosion sent a shockwave rippling through space. Nexkel's eyes narrowed. The humans had lost a ship, but the swarm pressed on, unyielding, relentless. The commander felt a rare pang of unease. This was no mere battle for dominance. This was a revelation, an awakening to a force the Nexari had underestimated for centuries. In the dim light of the bridge, the ancient symbols etched into the walls seemed to pulse with newfound significance. The myths of the demons were not exaggerations, they were warnings. Warnings of a species whose strength was not in brute power or advanced technology alone, but in an unbreakable unity that transcended the individual. Nexkel's mind raced through the ancient texts he had so diligently studied, accounts of humans who had united entire continents, defied cataclysms, and rebuilt their world from ashes. He had dismissed these as historical curiosities, relics of a primitive era. Now, he understood they were the foundation of an enduring legacy. The air in the bridge grew thick with tension, the sharp scent of ionized metals mingling with the faint hum of cooling systems. Nexkel felt the weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders as the human fleet's coordinated strikes began to peel away at the Nexari formations. The unrelenting pressure revealed cracks in their lines, fractures born not of weapons or strategy, but of an intangible force, the unyielding connection between human pilots. Quinlex's voice broke through the haze of battle. "Commander, their neural synchronization is evolving. They are adapting their strategies in real time, anticipating our moves before we can execute them. It is as if their collective mind is learning, growing stronger with every engagement." The realization dawned with terrifying clarity. The humans were not simply fighting the Nexari. They were becoming a singular entity of war, an organism whose parts communicated instantly, sharing experience and insight across vast distances. Their unity was an unbreakable bond, forged through shared purpose and relentless will. Nexkel's multifaceted eyes scanned the battlefield again, seeking a weakness, a flaw to exploit. But the more he searched, the more elusive it became. The humans were not scattered prey. They were a tide, an unstoppable force, fueled by something deeper than technology or firepower. He recalled the figure of Lisa Kim, the human commander whose presence had been felt even across the void. Her voice had conveyed calm confidence during diplomatic exchanges, a quiet authority that inspired those under her command. Lisa was not just a leader, she was the embodiment of their unity, a nexus of focus and resolve. As the battle raged, Nexkel felt the first stirrings of fear creeping into his heart, a sensation foreign and unwelcome. His species had conquered countless worlds, crushed foes with overwhelming might, and yet here they faced a species whose strength lay not in domination, but in cohesion. The Vorthan's wrath shuddered violently as another wave of human fighters swept past their defenses. The ship's alarm systems screamed in protest, echoing the chaos unfolding around them. Nexkel gritted his mandibles against the rising panic, forcing himself to maintain composure. Amidst the cacophony, a new realization blossomed, a revelation that transcended the tactical. This unity, this shared consciousness, was not merely a tool of war. It was a testament to the human spirit, a collective heartbeat forged through millennia of adversity and perseverance. The stars outside the viewport seemed to blur, the cold emptiness replaced by a vivid tapestry of light and shadow. The humans had become more than a species, they were a living legend, a force that defied the cold arithmetic of conquest. Nexkel's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on his own people's history. The Nexari were a proud race, bound by honor and tradition, yet they had grown complacent, blinded by the arrogance of past victories. The humans, in contrast, had survived cataclysms, united disparate cultures, and emerged stronger, not in spite of their differences but because of them. On the bridge, the flickering displays showed the human fleet coalescing into new formations, their movements fluid and purposeful. The once scattered swarm now operated as a single, colossal organism, each pilot a vital cell in an unbreakable body. The commander's resolve hardened. Though the humans' unity was formidable, the Nexari would not yield. They would adapt, confront this revelation with equal determination. But beneath the steely veneer, the truth lingered. This was a new era, one where survival depended not on isolated might, but on the strength of unbreakable bonds. The battle's crescendo approached, the space around Earth a maelstrom of light and sound. Nexkel felt the ancient fear settle deeper, a shadow that whispered of ruin and rebirth. The humans were not merely defenders of their world, they were harbingers of a truth long forgotten. A truth written in the stars, and sealed by the unbreakable unity of a species reborn. As the final wave surged forward, the commander stood tall, eyes blazing with a fierce light. This was the third revelation, the moment when myth shattered reality, and the true nature of humanity was laid bare, a species not to be conquered, but to be reckoned with, united beyond comprehension, and unbreakable in their resolve. The stars bore silent witness to the clash, their distant fires flickering in the eternal dance of light and darkness. In that moment, amidst the tempest of battle and revelation, Nexkel understood the unyielding truth: the humans were no longer the defenseless prey of legends. They were a force of nature, unbreakable, unstoppable, and united as one. Stars burned cold and distant beyond the viewport of the Nexari command ship Veltherim, their pinpricks of light indifferent to the chaos unfolding in the shadow of Earth's atmosphere. Commander Nexkel stood rigid, every sinew taut, as the alien warship hung suspended in a turbulent, cloud-choked sky. The scent of ozone and scorched metal filled the cabin, a bitter reminder of the recent skirmish. Yet, it was not the remnants of their own weapons' fire that troubled him most. It was the approaching silhouette, a single human ship that dwarfed all expectations, a ship that defied every preconception the Nexari held about this defenseless world. The Argent Seraph loomed like an avenging specter, its hull a jagged tapestry of reinforced alloys and unfamiliar geometries. It slid through the atmosphere with unnatural grace, vapor trailing like tendrils from its engines, the air itself splitting with the thrumming pulse of a power unknown to Nexari science. As the ship drew closer, a low hum reverberated through the Veltharim's hull, a vibration that gnawed at Nexkel's core, an unsettling resonance that spoke of energies both ancient and primal. He thought of the legends, echoes of a time when the demons roamed the galaxy, creatures of destruction and will unmatched, vanquished only by the combined might of the ancient civilizations. The archives had warned them, but none had truly believed the horrors were real. Silent alarms flashed red across the command deck, casting flickering shadows over the crew's anxious faces. Quinlex, the scientist, stood nearby, his multi-faceted eyes reflecting the dread the commander felt but dared not voice. The scientist's hands trembled slightly as he tapped at the control panel, trying to decipher the enigmatic energy signatures flooding their sensors. The Argent Seraph broke through the upper cloud layers, revealing its full, terrifying form. Its prow was adorned with what appeared to be spiked fins, sharp and jagged like the claws of some gargantuan beast. Panels shifted and retracted, revealing weapon arrays that shimmered with a heat unlike any chemical or plasma-based system the Nexari had encountered. This was not a conventional warship. It was a predator unleashed. Nexkel's jaw clenched. The Veltharim had faced many foes, but this was something else entirely. He could feel the weight of the moment pulling at the very fabric of his being. The precipice between survival and annihilation. The human ship's engines flared brilliantly, sending shockwaves that distorted the air, shimmering like heat above a fire. Then came the first strike. A beam of light, white, hot, and seething with energy, lanced across the void, striking the Veltharim's shields with a series of thunderous impacts that sent shudders through the ship's frame. The energy tore through their defensive grid, carving molten channels along the hull's outer plating. The Nexari shields flared, a desperate countermeasure, but the human weaponry seemed to adapt instantaneously, slicing through their defenses with uncanny precision. Nexkel's grip tightened around the railing as the command deck shook violently. The smell of burnt circuitry and ionized air permeated the room as systems began to fail. Quinlex's voice, ragged with fear, broke the silence. "Commander, their energy modulation is adaptive. Our countermeasures are ineffective. We must retreat." But retreat was no longer an option. The Argent Seraph closed the distance, its sleek form diving through the atmosphere with the predatory intent of a star-born beast. Below, the planet's surface was a blur of shifting greens and blues, a reminder of what was at stake. Life teetering on the edge of extinction. Nexkel's eyes flicked toward the planet, the weight of the choice pressing down like a physical force. Then, a sudden roar shattered the tension, the deep, sonorous bellow of the human ship's weapons charging. The Argent Seraph unleashed a volley of energy pulses, each one striking with the force of a meteor impact. The Veltharim shuddered under the assault, cracked spiderwebbing across its hull as emergency bulkheads sealed off breached compartments. Fire and smoke billowed into the corridors, the acrid stench choking the air. Nexkel barked orders, his voice steady despite the chaos. "All hands to battle stations! Focus on the forward quadrants." His gaze locked onto the nearest weapons array, coordinating the ship's dwindling firepower with a precision born of desperation. The Nexari warship's turrets spun, firing bursts of purple plasma that sizzled through the atmosphere. The exchange was brutal, a ballad of light and fury, a contest where each second meant life or death. Yet, against the Argent Seraph, their volleys seemed to dissipate like sparks in a gale. Suddenly, the ship convulsed violently. A massive explosion erupted along the starboard side, throwing crew members off balance and setting off cascading alarms. Nexkel was thrown against a console, the taste of copper and dust filling his mouth. His vision blurred, but he forced himself to stand, pushing through the sting in his ribs. Quinlex scrambled to his side, his voice urgent. "Commander, Their primary weapon is charging for a direct strike. If they hit the core reactors. Nexkel cut him off, voice low but resolute. Not if we end this now. He turned to the tactical display, plotting a desperate gambit. The Veltharim's engines groaned under strain as they initiated an aggressive maneuver, diving toward the planet in a steep arc. The human ship followed, its engines flaring in pursuit, energy weapons locked on. The two vessels descended into the thick atmosphere, the sky a roiling tempest of clouds and lightning. Thunder crashed like the roar of ancient gods, rain lashing against the hulls. Visibility dropped to near zero, the world reduced to a maelstrom of tumult and fury. Nexkel's heart pounded in his chest. The storm's chaos was both curse and opportunity. A shield from the human ship's sensors, a veil to mask their final move. The Veltharim lurched again, its damaged hull straining against the forces of gravity and turbulence. Systems flickered, failing under the relentless assault. The ship's AI emitted a series of fractured warnings, voices overlapping in a discordant chorus. Yet Nexkel pressed on, eyes fixed on the tactical map. His fingers danced over the controls, initiating the ship's last protocol, a desperate fusion of ancient technology and raw will. The Nexari had long feared the demon, the legendary destroyer whose name was spoken only in whispers. Now, as the storm raged outside and the Argent Seraph closed in for the kill, the legend was about to awaken. From deep within the Veltharim's core, a low hum began, a vibration that resonated through the ship's bones. Slowly, the ambient energy within the ship shifted, coalescing into a blinding sphere of radiance. The ancient power, hidden and dormant for millennia, surged to life. Nexkel felt the ship respond, its metal skin thrumming with sentience, its systems aligning in an unprecedented harmony. The ship was no longer just a vessel, it was a living force, a manifestation of the Nexari's final defiance. Outside, the Argent Seraph advanced, engines roaring, weapons primed. Its sensors pierced through the storm, locking on to the Veltharim's core. The tension in the command deck was palpable, time slowing to a crawl. Then, with a sudden, searing flash, the Veltharim erupted. A wave of energy cascaded outward, painting the heavens with a kaleidoscope of light and color. The shockwave tore through the clouds, scattering rain and lightning, flattening trees across the surface below. The Argent Seraph was caught in the blast, its hull rattling violently as the energy-battering ram struck with overwhelming force. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Then came the aftermath. The Veltharim drifted, battered but unbroken. Its hull bore the scars of battle, but the core thrummed steadily, the ancient power contained controlled. The Argent Seraph had faltered, its engines sputtered, systems failing. The ship veered off course, smoke streaming from ruptured conduits. A flicker of hope stirred within Nexkel's chest. Against all odds, the demon had been unleashed, not as a harbinger of destruction, but as a protector. The storm began to wane, clouds parting to reveal the first pale light of dawn. The planet below shimmered with fragile beauty, untouched yet by the horrors of war. Nexkel exhaled slowly, the weight of command settling upon him once more. The battle was far from over, but this day had been won, not by brute force, but by awakening the strength buried deep within. He glanced once more at the Argent Seraph, limping away, and felt a grudging respect for the humans. No longer the defenseless prey, but worthy adversaries, wielders of a power that could rival even the ancient myths. The galaxy was changing, and the demons of old were rising anew. And Earth, once thought vulnerable, had become a beacon of unexpected strength. The void outside the viewport stretched endlessly, a black ocean scattered with distant pinpricks of light, stars, cold and indifferent witnesses to what had just unfolded. Inside the bridge of the Nexari command cruiser, the air was thick with tension, and the scent of recycled atmosphere tinged faintly with the metallic aftertaste of emergency protocols. Nexkel stood rigid, the weight of the moment pressing down on him more heavily than the reinforced hull could withstand the vacuum outside. The stars no longer shimmered as distant lights, but as markers of a galaxy forever altered. He could still hear the echo of the battle ringing in his mind. The shriek of plasma fire, the thunderous impact of kinetic rounds, the sharp, acrid smell of overstrained circuitry melting under stress. The once pristine corridors of the ship bore scars, scorch marks, dented bulkheads, and the faintest traces of a smoky haze that clung to the air like an unwelcome ghost. That single human vessel, the intrepid Dawn, had arrived like a storm, swift and unyielding, shattering centuries of Nexari certainty. Nexkel's eyes darted across the tactical display, the glowing lines pulsing with residual activity. The human ship's outline, a sleek amalgamation of angles and curves unlike anything in Nexari design, was now silent, a cold monument to victory and loss. His mind replayed the moment when that ship had emerged from the shadows, defying expectations, obliterating his squadrons with ruthless precision. Every maneuver Lisa Kim executed had been calculated, flawless, and terrifyingly efficient. The humans had shattered the narrative. They were no mere defenseless creatures, no relics of ancient fear. They were predators, survivors, something ancient archives failed to capture. The Nexari had come armed not only with weapons but with dread, a fear handed down through millennia, etched into their collective psyche by stories of the demons that once roamed these very sectors. Yet, the humans were those demons incarnate, a species that wore their primal savagery beneath a veneer of discipline and technology. The realization settled heavy in Nexkel's chest, an unspoken admission that the galaxy had changed forever. He felt the subtle vibration of the ship's hull as damage control teams began their work, a rhythmic pulse that contrasted sharply with the chaos before. The soft hum of repair drones weaving through conduits, the muted chatter over comms, and the steady hiss of coolant systems brought a fragile calm. To reckon with what had transpired, Nexkel's gaze shifted to the rear viewport, where the Earth hovered, a pale blue marble swirling with clouds and oceans, alive and vibrant. Never before had the Nexari felt such a mixture of awe and apprehension toward a world. The humans had wielded that homeworld spirit like a weapon, channeling its indefinable resilience into the cold void of space. It was a beacon of life and defiance, a stark contrast to the barren moons and dying stars the Nexari had long dominated. Despite the victory, a shadow of uncertainty stretched across Nexkel's mind. The battle had ended, but the war, the true war, was only beginning. That single ship had arrived, but more would follow. The humans were not solitary anomalies. They were the heralds of a new era, fierce and unrelenting. And the Nexari had no choice but to adapt or be consumed. As the bridge lights dimmed to a softer glow, Nexkel allowed himself a moment of reflection. His thoughts drifted to Quinlex, the scientist whose skepticism had been shattered alongside their fleets. The ancient archives had spoken in riddles and warnings, but Quinlex's research had brought a kernel of understanding. The humans' arrival was not a coincidence, it was the culmination of a cosmic reckoning. A chapter long foretold, but never believed. The metallic scent of the ship was punctuated by the faint undercurrent of something unfamiliar, something almost organic. Nexkel recalled the brief moments when the human soldiers had boarded their vessel, their presence invasive yet strangely invigorating. The humans smelled of earth and sweat, of fire and rain, a sensory imprint that lingered in the corridors. Their voice patterns were harsh yet compelling, their movements precise and purposeful. They were warriors molded by a world of struggle, shaped by an unforgiving environment that had honed their instincts to razor sharpness. The sound of emergency sirens faded, replaced by the steady drone of systems stabilizing. Nexkel's hand hovered over the tactical console, fingers trembling ever so slightly. He could initiate a retreat, call for reinforcements, or submit to negotiations. Each choice carried weight, each path uncertain. The Nexari had always been a people of dominion and control, but now they faced an enigma wrapped in flesh and steel. Outside, the stars glimmered silently, indifferent to the rise and fall of empires. Yet within the whole, a new light kindled, an ember of hope, fear, and unspoken possibility. This was no longer a galaxy ruled by ancient myths and forgotten fears. It was a living saga, authored by humans and Nexari alike, written in the language of survival and tempered in the fires of conflict. Nexkel's breath came steady, controlled. The ship's vibrations softened as the damaged teams reported progress. He felt the collective gaze of his officers, their unspoken question hanging in the air, what now? The commander's mind raced through scenarios, strategies, and the murmurings of future confrontations. But beneath the tactical calculations was a deeper, more profound realization: respect. The humans had arrived not as prey but as predators. They bore the scars of their homeworld's harshness and wielded technology that rivaled even the Nexari's most advanced constructs. They were not invaders, they were survivors, champions of a legacy that transcended the stars. And in their arrival, the Nexari saw reflected a mirror of their own ancient myths. Demons reborn in flesh and purpose. A soft chime interrupted the stillness. A message incoming from the human ship. Nexkel hesitated, fingers poised over the console. The message was simple, its tone firm yet laced with a cautious hand, extended across the void of space. It spoke not of conquest, but of dialogue, of understanding, and the fragile hope of coexistence. The bridge lights seemed to brighten marginally, as if responding to the fragile thread of peace woven through the cold expanse. Nexkel allowed himself a slow nod, a gesture both personal and symbolic. The history of the Nexari was rich with conflict and conquest, but now, confronted with the living embodiment of their ancient fears, they faced a crossroads. In the silent stillness of space, two species stood poised on the brink of a new chapter, each shaped by their past, each uncertain of what the future held. The humans had arrived with fire and fury, undeniable proof that legends were real and that the galaxy's tapestry was far richer and more dangerous than the Nexari had ever imagined. Nexkel's eyes lingered on Earth's glowing orb, a beacon of life and defiance. The memory of Brandon Sullivan's steady voice, the unyielding resolve of Lisa Kim, and the indomitable spirit of their vessel burned brightly within him. The battle had ended, but the story was far from over. The ship's hum deepened, systems humming back to full strength. The Nexari were battered but unbroken, their legacy challenged, but not erased. They would meet this new dawn, not as victims of fate, but as architects of their destiny. The stars outside continued their eternal dance, cold and distant. But inside the command cruiser, a new warmth blossomed, an ember of respect, of recognition, and of the endless possibility that lay in the meeting of two fierce hearts. The Nexari had thought Earth defenseless, and the galaxy would never be the same.